Spinosaurs have continued to get weirder and weirder year upon year, and this time around, it's not Spinosaurus itself that's been making the rounds. Irritator, an animal I covered myself on this channel way back in 2019, is quite the interesting genus as the name implies, being quite the irritating animal when it was being described. Excavated from a chalk concentration from the Romualdo Formation in Brazil dating to the early Cretaceous in 1996, the fossil was acquired by fossil dealers who smuggled the fossil outside of the country to Germany. Before sending it though, the skull that they had of the animal was partly crushed, as is often the case for most large fossil bones. Instead of just leaving it be though, in hopes of making it look more complete, mainly in a goal to make it more valuable, the fossil traders obscured the skull underneath layers of plaster, which is a widespread occurrence among many fossils found in the region, which was very unfortunate. The skull, once received by the buyers of the specimen at the SMNS, were unaware of this modification and only found out about the modifications after it was sent to universities in the UK for CT scan imaging. After discovering this, the process of removing the plaster proves to be so much of an annoyance that the authors would go on to describe the animal underneath as Irritator, and only after a good while of preparation was it found out that they were a Spinosaur definitively in 2002, 6 whole years after their initial description. Once properly restored, the holotype of what we know today as the Irritator Challenger Eye still represents the most complete Spinosaurus skull known to science, and hence is a very valuable piece in reconstructing these animals and what they were like. The study I'll be talking about today examined the bones of the skull based on digital reconstructions made from tomography data to better access and examine the material. Once done, the skull of this animal revealed a whole suite of features not yet seen in such detail. The skull, while being very articulated in its preservation, doesn't, because of the matrix surrounding it, show off the range of movements and interactions the skull would have had, which is where the scanning of the bones came into play, allowing researchers to examine the bones and their biomechanics in a three-dimensional and interactive way. The lower jaw of Irritator was especially interesting in that when the mouth was opened, the lower jaw would expand out to the sides, and would not do so as would be seen in other theropods, as the jaw would otherwise dislocate if forced to open in the way we would assume them to. It's worth mentioning that this expansion of the jaws is not like in snakes or Shin Godzilla, where the jaws can expand out at their tips, with the parts that flex in the skull of Irritator being adjoined around the middle of the lower jaws, with the tips still being connected, something which is seen instead in pelicans and monitor lizards. This jaw expansion and bending, given Spinosaurs are already well known to be largely piscivorous and with a suite of aquatic adaptations to go alongside that, seems therefore to have assisted them for this lifestyle. This expansion would have been useful in enveloping prey like fish and then being able to quickly engulf them, with their jaw musculature being further evidence of this. The muscles that allow for the jaw to shut are placed far back in their skulls, which while giving them a weaker bite, allow them to shut faster, enabling them to snatch prey out of the water with greater ease. After all, Irritator's jaw is best designed for grappling with relatively small and writhing prey, not being needed for powerful crushing or slicing bites as seen in their distant relatives. This lower jaw structure, from what's been observed in other Spinosaurus genera previously, also seems to suggest that Baryonyx, Suchomimus, and even Spinosaurus itself would have likely opened their jaws in a similar manner, and is definitely something to be looked into more. The reconstructed skull also revealed a near-complete palate, as well as that from the skull positioning, Irritator did have a field of binocular vision, which would have helped in their coordination and depth perception. With the publication of the paper, it has also raised in its wake a reignited urge for the Irritator holotype to be returned to Brazil, and rightfully so. After being smuggled out of the country back in the 90s, the procurement of the fossil back to Brazil has been a long and often an active process, and as was seen with the commencing method Uberajara, also from Brazil, the discussions surrounding them eventually got them in the process of being returned, and shows that it can be very effective to call out the unjust procurement of these fossils when they occur. The paper was in fact temporarily made unavailable, being placed under review until being put back up after the ethics statement present was criticised. It's worth keeping in mind that the authors and the others involved in the study don't themselves have control over how and where the specimen is kept, and also weren't the people who both smuggled and brought the fossils out of Brazil. The authors of this paper did not even handle the physical fossil, as another aside. Said authors have also been vocal on their end in that they support the repatriation of the fossil back to Brazil and have helped in these efforts too. Banding together as a community and acknowledging the injustices, while also not directing our frustrations to those who are also trying to help, is the way to go about this issue, and the authors publishing their paper has directly helped in a large way towards that goal of returning the specimen, and allowing science communication and research to be more accessible and funded in their home country. It's not ideal, but working with what we've got and or can work with is the best step going forward, and hopefully more can be done in this area in the near future. All in all, I thank you for watching this video on these animals and that you may have learned something new. If you would like to see more from this channel, be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. And with that, I'll see you next time, whatever that may be.